Hello, Matt.
Hey, Rick.
How are you?
From the look of us, we look pretty good, I think.
We've had a few comments about, being careful, make sure we social distance. And so, this is what we've come up with. So, I went a little bit more festive today with the Hawaiian look. I see you going formal with the tuxedo t-shirt.
Keep professional.
Yeah, well, that's true. It is. I didn't think about that. So thank you for keeping that up. So, hey.
Do you wear this to the grocery store?
I think it's going to get weird. Yeah, I do, actually. I wear this to bed, but that's just a whole nother podcast. So we'll talk about that later.
This is his stuff. Now I'm really worried.
Right.
Bandana's falling off. Yeah. All right, it's out.
That's fine. I've got mine on. We are both protected equally. All right, look. So today we're going to talk, you guys. We struggle with topics because, as you know, everything's pressing with COVID and everybody wants to talk about that. We're probably don't want to talk about it just because we feel like we've talked about it enough already.
Pretty much.
But what we came up with was something that we use here at work that we really like, which is something called the Enneagram Test. Now, I'm not going to lay claim to coming up with the idea to use it for business. There are consultants and companies that will come in and administer the Enneagram for you and then help you understand how it works for your company. We first heard about it, to be fair, on the Andy Stanley podcast through the lens of business. So for us, you guys, the Enneagram is a great tool for communication. So if we want to take a step back, what is it? It's been around forever. Some think as long, several hundred years ago. Okay, I'm fogging up. Hold on. I can't do this. All right, there we go. Several hundred years ago, it was being used as a test, Jesuit priest, way back when, right? And so what's this just working? Hold on. Don't give me COVID. Don't spit in my eye. And
oh my God.
It's now still used, right? And so there's different iterations of different versions of it, but we really like it. And what it is it gives you an idea of how you communicate, and it gives you an idea of people on your team and how they communicate. And here's the thing that you guys need to hear before we dig into the types is that there are no wrong types, right? There's no right or wrong type. It's helpful to understand your own type. So it explains maybe some of your reactions to communication. And it really helps for you to understand your teammates' types, because then you understand maybe why they react the way they do. Maybe sometimes their behavior seems off-putting or different, when in fact there is no right or wrong. It's just we all look at, to assume that we all look at the world through the same lens would be crazy. And this is a great way to measure how we all look at the world, or different problems or challenges or communication or opportunities, whatever those are. And it helps you understand your teammates so much better. And for us, it was just a really fun exercise as well. So I'd highly recommend, there's a couple of free tests online. There's some questions about the validity of the free ones, but that's what we started with. It's just a simple way to do it. And this is something you could even do right now, guys. If you guys are working remotely with your teams, have them go and take the Enneagram test online and then do a Zoom call and compare notes on what people found and have them explain how it made them feel to find out about who they were, and also have other people comment about that person and be like, oh yeah, I could see that because of this, right? And keep it positive. But at the end of the day, man, we love it. It's a great test, and it has some real longevity and proven results. So there are 9 different types in the Enneagram. And again, none of them are wrong. So what we're going to do today is just walk through each type and then talk about maybe what that type looks like in your business, right?
Yep.
So fire away, Matt. What do we got, man?
All right, so I'll give you the title and give you a little description about it. So the first one is the Reformer. This is a rational, idealistic type, principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and a perfectionist.
Yeah, so we have a couple of 1s on our team. And so a 1 is an absolute perfectionist. So the positive of that, and I think the terms they use in the Enneagram are like healthy and unhealthy, but let's just fogging up. Let's talk about positive and not positive. So the positives of a 1 as a perfectionist mean that you're going to get good work. They're going to be most happy and thriving when they're giving you really good output or really good work, right? And so that's the upside. Mm-hmm. Now, the downside can be that because they are so convicted to perfection, they can be a bit judgmental, right? There can be a little bit of, hey, This is the right way to do it, and this is the wrong way to do it. Like it's black or it's white, it's right or it's wrong. There is no middle ground. And as you know, there's always a middle ground, right? It's like if you take like a decision tree as an example, in the book Decisive, I believe, or Decision by Dan and Chip Heath, they talk about don't narrow frame your decisions. It doesn't always have to be this or that, right? And most often it doesn't need to be this or that. That's actually a bad lens for decision making, so that you should really probably find some middle ground. What if it's a combination of this and that, right? And so perfectionists will tend to say, no, it has to be, this is the right way to do it. It's the only way to do it. And anything outside of that for them may be seen as lesser than or not good enough, right? And the other challenge with a 1 will be that they typically will suffer from, if anything, paralysis through analysis. Like this thing has to be dead on perfect, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not, I'm not even going to start. And that would be that personality type. Let's just say in our organization, right? Because one of our core values is to drive change. Well, change is messy and it's ugly and it's not perfect,
right?
To the word, right? To the letter of the word. And so a 1 may struggle in our organization as an example because we are ready, fire, aim, and they would prefer to have everything dialed in 100% perfect, all data points, all I's dotted, all T's crossed, or we can't launch it at all. And so if you have that person on your team, understand that in a healthy way, they're going to help you push for absolute perfection. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. But they'll also then you're going to have to help them emotionally navigate what is good enough.
Right.
And sometimes good enough is good enough to get something out there. If you can get 80% there, we're cooking with oil, right? It's not going to be 100. So you're going to have to maybe talk them off the ledge. And when you're doing this in a team meeting, have people describe that and challenge them that way. Like, have you ever felt this way? Talk about a project that we did here where you felt like we launched it before it was ready and it wasn't perfect and it irritated you. It's like, all right, great. We have a couple of those on our team, right?
Absolutely, we do.
There's great things about it. Again, there's always pluses and minuses. There's not a right or a wrong. So 1 is going to be a perfectionist at their core, which is good, but the downside could be a bit judgmental and they're going to want everything to be just right before they do anything. Right?
Cool. All right. Number 2, this is definitely fits our mold for a coach, is the helper. And this is the caring, interpersonal type, demonstrative, generous, people-pleasing, and possessive.
Yeah, so a 2 through the lens of work is what we see most often. Almost everyone on our team had at least what they call a wing. So we'll take this opportunity to explain. You typically have a dominant personality, and then you have what you call a wing, which is sort of just think of it as like a sub or maybe a close second or something, right? So you might have the dominant one, then you lean towards another one, if that makes sense, right? Everybody on our team was either a 2 first or at least had a wing of a 2, right? And so it's great because the 2s are emotionally intelligent. They feel what other people feel. They're compassionate, right? Perfect to help in this setting, like to be a coach or a personal trainer or to be customer service. Like a 2 is a great personality type. Yep. And I was pleased to see that most of our guys had 2s, at least as a wing. Now, the drawback with a 2 is they're going to struggle with professional boundaries a little bit. So think about in our business, like the coaches that we've had in the past that take on the burden and the problems and the drama of their clients personally, right? Like we've had coaches here who are real high 2s, which on one end makes them absolutely amazing. In an unhealthy way, it can make them, again, a little bit maybe burned out would be certainly one way to do it. We've had coaches just leave here in tears because, we're driving change. So change is not always popular and they're getting negative feedback and they take so much of that in. It's like you can take a negative comment from a client and you take it to heart, and too much of that for a 2 can be overwhelming because they're feeling what everyone feels, right? The possessive part, I think, goes back to more personal, right? Like in a personal relationship, a 2 can be the most giving person ever, but there may be some expectations for giving back. Like if I do these things, I expect you're all mine, kind of idea. And that could cross over to business as well in some ways, right? Like I'm going to do all these things, like I'm pouring my heart into all these people, right? And without expressing it directly, there's probably some expectation with what you'll get back. So if a 2 is working with a client who's a cold fish, it might be a huge turnoff because they feel like, God, I'm putting in all this effort and they're not even recognizing me, right? So there is some possessiveness, not only of like a person, but of the reciprocity of getting back those feelings. But 2s are great, man. You just have to keep them healthy by helping them understand who they are and to have professional boundaries, right? Some of that in our setting comes from the structure. When we were one-on-one training, that was really hard because you develop a true one-on-one relationship, and now you're carrying the social aspect. You're carrying the whole relationship during a session. Whereas now, when we're training 6 people, you still have the opportunity to touch people personally, that's what a 2 gets up in the morning to do, right? But at the same time, the structure helps those 2s because there's a bit of a professional boundary, meaning when there's 6 people, you don't run down the rabbit hole of too many personal issues, where you can actually keep that boundary and be a coach and not necessarily be a counselor, right? And step outside of your comfort zone.
Awesome. All right, let's look at number 3. This is another wing that we see a lot with our coaches. This is the achiever. This is the success-oriented, pragmatic type, adaptive, excelling, driven, and image conscious.
Yeah, so this was you, right? Yep. So this would be a great person for sales, honestly, because this person is a scorekeeper 100%, right? Mm-hmm. Like they want to be the best in everything they do. And not only do they want to be the best, but they also want to be seen as the best. So that's where that image conscious thing came in. It's like, they don't want to go out onto the floor and look like they don't know what they're doing. Or maybe this is a person who might dress a certain way because there's a certain image that they're trying to upkeep, right? They like the optics of what the company's doing. Like they want to work for a company that looks smart and successful. And these are scorekeepers too. They're usually highly competitive, again, which is why they lean towards sales. So the good thing is if you've got somebody like in your position, you're putting out programs, you want tangible wins. Like how many gyms do we have? You always ask me, how many franchises do we got? Well, how many leads did we get last week? It's like you're keeping score for a game, and you were a good athlete, and that makes sense, right? And you still participate in athletics. So those type of people tend to be really good at sales and scorekeepers. Now, the only downside to that is sometimes there's things happening in a business that aren't necessarily competitive or measurable, right? And that can be a bit frustrating for 3s because everything is performance based. Mm-hmm. So it's funny. I think you had a wing of a 2, which kind of makes the perfect balance, right? It's like the touchy feely stuff with the high performer side, right? So the high performer side means you're going to keep score, you're going to push, you want to beat people. It's like everything's a game and a competition, and like you'll bring to me other franchise concepts, and you're like, "Oh, what do you think about this? Oh, we're going to kill that. Can we do better than this?" And you know what I mean? It's like we're going into a game plan against someone, which I love. It's awesome, and I'm a little bit of that as well. The drawback is if there are times when that's not always applicable, right? And then it can seem like, what am I even doing? Like if I'm not scoring and winning and crushing, right? Yes. Then I'm bored. Like what's next? When are we going to blow? How many times you tell me about? When are we going to have 1,000 franchises? Come on, man. Let's go. Let's get this thing rolling. It's like game on all the time. Yeah. Well, and that's good. The thing is though, for someone like you, I guess, and you can maybe even speak to some of the challenges that you've had, but it's like, well, yeah, but there is a lot of touchy-feely stuff that has to happen, right? There are things that are happening within the business, sort of this infinite game idea that we heard from, what's his name? Seth Godin, I think it is?
Sinek.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Simon Sinek. That's it. Yep. Where, the game is just to stay in the game, right? But someone that's a 3 is going to appreciate a finite game, which means where's the friggin' scorecard, right? And so sometimes for someone like you, it's like, hey, man, we're doing fine. Like, you're doing great. I know there's not a score today. Like, we didn't win this, right? But we did this, and we're doing okay. Those just aren't things that are measurable, per se. What do you think
as a 3, it's just you got to make up your own game sometime. Just make sure you keep challenging yourself and be like, oh, I'm going to make this post. It's going to be great, or do whatever it is. You just got to figure it out. Yeah. Which is definitely tough right this time.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I've seen, and we've talked about, our struggles around this for you, because it's like, okay, it's keeping score, we're moving forward. And right now it's like, okay, we're kind of circling the wagons. We're theoretically building some new things and ideas, and that's fun, but there's not really a score around it per se. Yeah. And so that could be a struggle for sure. So those folks, you just need to make sure they don't get bored, and that they understand that there's an infinite game going on within that, and there are finite scores to keep this game going. But at the end of the day, there's not always a scorecard, and there's not always a win in every single scenario, right?
Yeah. Cool. All right. Number 4, I don't think we see this one a lot. This is the individualist, the sensitive, withdrawn type, expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental.
Yeah, this one I think is the least percentage of all people in the Enneagram test. So you could say the least percentage of the population. These are typically, imagine your brooding artist, right? That type. And they tend to lean towards these individual painters, musicians, things like that. So obviously they're highly creative, right? Which is awesome. But they're typically not going to do as well in, a group setting, or, do as well in maybe a corporate, like hardcore, like number pushing setting, because they're always going to want to do something that's on their own. They're going to be temperamental, right? They're going to want to go sit in the corner and play the guitar or whatever that is. So it's an interesting personality type. It doesn't really lend itself well to our business. We didn't have anyone on our team who even had a wing of a 4, right? Could be just because percentage-wise it's really small. And that's probably why there's not a lot of people that are great painters or great sculptors or great musicians. It's like you have to have a certain personality type to be able to do that.
Yeah, it just doesn't really fit our business, right?
Yeah, and I mean we don't use this as a hiring tool. We have another sort of how you operate. It's more tactical blocking and tackling assessment that we use. But this is just a good idea for more how you operate and how you think, right? And so I don't really, quite honestly, and this is just not a negative to a 4, I don't see how a 4 would really fit on our team the way that we currently are structured.
Maybe not as their main one, maybe as a wing.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe, if we were doing some graphics work or something, we had a marketing person on our team that was more back office who was doing that kind of whiz-bang stuff. That would definitely fit into the mix. I don't see that person fitting onto the team right now, even though they're not negative. Like I like music and art as well. So like we got to have them. I just don't see them on our team right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Number 5, this is the investigator, the intense cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated.
Yeah. This is your CFO perhaps, or definitely your accounting department, right? So the negative with these folks is they can be seen as aloof, right? Maybe not part of the team. Somewhat detached, certainly don't bring the level of enthusiasm maybe that the rest of the team brings. But on the flip side, somebody's got to sit in a room and go through spreadsheets and assess data, right, and dig through it. And it's a tough personality type to combine with a high level of energy that's needed in fitness. So again, the plus is if you can get these people healthy, they can participate enough in the team dynamics, and they're going to bring something to the team that most of the skill sets in fitness don't have.
Yeah.
Which is, hey, here's what we're finding, right? Here's the third quarter numbers. Here's what it looks like. This is how many leads we have. And it's one thing to understand that, but to dig in and really enjoy that type of work and thrive on it, it's a whole different personality type.
Yeah.
So this is, again, going to be more back office, things like that, right? The negatives can be, again, is if you don't bring them along into the social aspect, they would be happy to never meet with your team at all and sit in the back office and just pump out spreadsheets all day.
We've had that.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's okay, like as long as that's the only function. But if you're going to have somebody try to do these things, like if you have like here we have a general manager, which in so many terms means sales and client retention. Well, to ask that person who has to be very outgoing, right, and probably a 2, mostly like outgoing and connected to people and high level emotional intelligence. To ask that person to then go sit in the office for 8 hours and go through spreadsheets is probably going to be like, it's a bad fit, right? So you really got to think about that as the owner of a business or the manager. It's like, there's always a flip side of a coin, right? There's a flip side of every coin. It's like, hey, I love this one friend because they're fun and exciting and they like to party and everything. Yeah, but the flip side is they're really unorganized, right? They're always late to stuff. And they drive me crazy, right? Because I can never count on them. Well, yeah, but you can't have both. There's always a flip side. And so it's the same thing with the Enneagram. It's like there's going to be some positives, but you got to think of that other side of the coin. And so in this case, that other side may be, again, you got to bring them along a little bit, but it may be that they seem aloof and detached and somewhat bored with the, rah excitement that fitness brings.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got a couple more to go, obviously. Would you use this just kind of help get your team into the right seats?
Yeah,
functions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. It's not a bad idea. And sometimes you'll find, it's funny once you learn about the test and then you do the test on your team, it's obvious why most of our coaches and client facing people are 2s, right? With a wing of a 3 or like I think you're a 3 with a wing 2 or whatever that is. Makes a lot of sense. So it's almost like, well, I could probably have predicted this. Right. But yeah, it's a really good idea. And I think if someone's thriving in their position, you'll find that it's pretty obvious that they fit into one of these categories.
Cool. All right. Number 6. This is the loyalist, the committed, security-oriented type, engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious.
Yeah, I will say that as an owner and an entrepreneur and sort of a squirrel-brained person, this person drives me nuts, right? This is the person where you're sitting around the table, you've been conceptualizing this idea, you put it all down on paper, you're going to present to your team and you're like, guys, here's what we're doing, right? And half the team's like, yeah, and everyone's like, okay, yeah, cool, right? And then there's that one person, right, every time who raises their hand. They're like, well, if we do that, we're gonna be disconnected from our existing customers. And you're just like, you just want to pull out a gun, old school, and shoot that person at the conference table, right? But here's the thing.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, it just sucks the life out of you, right? Me, personally. But here's the deal, and here's what you have to understand. Like, those people are 100% necessary.
Yeah.
And the reason is somebody's got to say, hey, wait a minute. Like, if you got a whole room full of go-go, excitement, who's the one person that's like, whoa, hello? Like, you realize that this could happen, right?
What was the study on this? So there's in there like a...
Yeah, it was on chimpanzees. Yeah. And so researchers studied I don't know, what do you call a group of chimpanzees? Like a herd or a pride or a gaggle or a flock? I don't know.
Go with a gaggle.
A posse.
Posse,
yes. A whole squad of chimps, right? And they observed them for a period of time, and they identified what they called the anxious chimps. Those are the ones that are always crying out, like crying wolf all the time, right? Like just anxious about every little noise or every little thing or every little animal that moved. They were squeaking the whole time. And the other chimps probably looked at them like we would look at that person at the conference table, like, would you just shut up, man? George, seriously,
Yeah.
Pipe down. Here's the interesting thing. After observing those chimps, they removed all of who they deemed to be the anxious chimps from the squad. Mm-hmm. Within a year, all the other chimps were dead. So why? Because somebody's got to be in the tree yelling, jaguar.
Don't do that. Don't jump off the cliff.
Whoa, jaguar.
Yeah.
Well, think about that through the lens of your business. Like, if everybody's like partying all the time, gung ho, right, touchy feely, there's not one person on the team who's like, whoa, this could cause this, right? Yeah. So think about those people. As much as they can rub like fitness enthusiastic people the wrong way, and it's like, man, fake it till you make it, and there's all this just manufactured energy sometimes around fitness. You better learn to love those people, because they might keep you from dying, right? The whole crowd might die, and then something might kill your business. So the key is to keep that person healthy. So what they can't do is, you have to coach them on maybe how to respond in a meeting, how to present that information, because it can come across at times as like really negative, right? Yeah. Where they're just like, well,
Debbie Downer.
Yeah. But just keep in mind, like, learn to appreciate them. And if you don't have one of those on your team, you're probably going to make a couple of bad decisions, right? So don't let your overall enthusiasm, cloud your judgment. And if you're just a go-getter all the time, this is the perfect person to have on the team. So they could be really healthy, but they will drive you nuts.
For sure. You need them. All right. Number 7, this is the enthusiast, the busy, fun-loving type, spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered.
Yep. So this is my wing, by the way. This is my secondary one. It's like party all the time for these folks, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see it. So here, what is the great thing about these folks? They're awesome, right? They typically have a ton of friends. They go to every party. They have FOMO every day. They want to do everything everyone else is doing. Like, this looks so much fun. I want to do this. I want to do that. And again, there's two sides to every coin. And that's fun. So that's the person that is the life of the party. Everybody at work loves them. They bring the energy up. Typically, it's fun when they're there. You just feel their presence and they have a great time. What's the opposite side of that? You already named it. Disorganized, maybe going to show up late, right? We've had coaches like that in the past that maybe weren't the best at, again, dotting their I's and crossing their T's, but they were so freaking impactful with clients that we put up with it. Yeah, we put up with it, and then you navigate around it and you coach them. You help them understand through maybe the lens of the Enneagram, here's who you are, right? And here's the amazing attributes that you have and what you bring to the table. Here's the challenges. And here's some things that if you're just aware of it, you could be better at it, right? So you can't be late. You can't be, those type of things. So, but you have to make them aware of it, or it's just party all the time.
Well, that's what, like, having just a nice system built where then they can just be that fun, awesome person. Yeah. And they're fine. They're going to stay within the structure.
Yeah. If you had like a 7-2, which we don't see a lot, but like somebody who cared about people, but also was the life of the party, like, what would that not be an amazing coach? Yes. You just have to like make sure that there's enough structure around there that they can actually adhere to, that makes it easy to follow a structure, so that they're just not going crazy, right? And doing their own thing all the time. But they are a ton of fun, and like, it's a great person to be around. You just, again, there's two sides to the coin.
Right. Got it. Cool. All right. Number 8. This is also you, right?
This is my first one.
Yeah. The powerful. Now, this is the challenger, which is the powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. Doesn't sound like you at all.
Well, yeah. So what's the positive? Like these people aren't always in positions of leadership, but they typically are, right? By force of will or whatever that is. So the plus is that when the chips are down, this person typically steps up well. Mm-hmm. Like I enjoy a crisis and a problem solving, and it's like, okay, I'll get on top of this, right? And so it's a good, and also protective. Like as much as I push our team, you guys, it's like I'm also really protective of our guys. You know, I'm probably guilty of letting people stick around longer than they should if they're not performing, and I'm trying to push them. You know, they can get better, and like by pure force of will, we'll change this person, and probably some negatives. Now, the big negative with this one, which is what I have, we're good now. I don't think I'm going to catch it anymore if I'd already got it. Anyway, the big negative is that you can come across as way too overbearing, right? And you don't realize that you are. So to me, as an 8, the way to resolution is through conflict. Like I think I've said this before I really understood this. We would sit in this room and I'd be like, hey, I want people to argue with me. Like I want that person to be like, hey, this is bullshit. You know, this is never going to work. Because to me, then I'm like, oh yeah, well, here's what we're going to do. And then we kind of conflict our way through it. Right. But which is crazy because there's very few personality types enjoy that type of environment, like that high conflict, right? Like, well, suck it up, get your shit done. You know, it's like, they don't like that at all. And so you just have to understand, you have to power back a little bit, you know. It's hard for me. You've noticed it with me. Like I'm always talking, right? It's like you try to talk over people or you finish people's sentences and all these things that are just really bad habits and really rude. If you understand that you can come across as an overbearing jerk in a lot of ways, you need to power back a little bit. Like let other people take the stage. Be quiet in a meeting for once, you know. Try to do those type of things as much as you can. It's going to be tough, but that's a healthy 8 because the upsides to 8 is that's the person you want when the chips are down to push your organization through or to lead you into battle or whatever that is, right?
It'll lead you not to suppress the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just don't step on everybody, right?
Yeah, there's those people, you ain't going to get any arguments if you just kind of, and you'll get crickets at the meetings, right?
Yeah, well, and that was the big mistake. So you probably know my history here. It's like I come out with this big idea and I'm just like driving it down everyone's throat. And then I'm like, who's got questions? And there's like no questions. And I'm like, you people don't care, you know? Like, because to me, it's like somebody'd be like, wait a minute, you know, and we would go at each other with the same amount of energy, right? It's like, that's impossible unless somebody else is an 8.
Right.
It's funny, we have somebody on our team who's an 8 as well, and they're on our team and they're also a 6. So imagine somebody that comes back at you as strong as you come at them.
Is that Anthony?
But they have, no, it's Jared.
Is Jared?
Which he's great. I mean, he does great work because he's an 8. So he's like he's got this personality that can be a little bit like in your face, but he also is a 6, which means his in your face is the stuff that like would drive somebody crazy if it's not healthy, right? So we kind of laugh about it now because it's like, well, I don't know, that's crap. That's not going to work. You know, it's like,
I'll leave you guys in a room.
Yeah, exactly. It's like fisticuffs, you know, in a couple minutes. But I think over time, as we understand those two personalities, they're really healthy. So it's like I can count on him probably challenging me maybe even more than I would like and maybe doing it in a way and pointing out holes in something that I didn't see, right? And then over time, you just work through it, then you're fine. You just understand each other better.
That's really good for just as a coach, though, too, because people will follow you. They'll do what you say because they see that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a great like coach of something, like a football coach or, you know, a sports coach of some sort, or even a coach for fitness. Cause you just tell people like, hey, this is what you need to do. Yeah. And you're unwavering in your message and you come across as very self-confident, even if you don't know what you're doing. And you really ultimately are very protective of your group. So if you have clients, you are protecting them and you really want them to do well.
Cool. All right. We're on to the last one. This is the peacemaker, the easygoing, self-efficating type. Efficating, can't say that one. Receptive, reassuring, agreeable, and complacent.
Yeah, so the peacemaker, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the largest percentage of people. Yes.
Do we even have any here?
Yeah, I think we have a few. Actually, my wife is one. So, well, what's funny is imagine being a peacemaker who hates conflict and you're married to an 8 who thinks the way to any success is through conflict, right?
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make it easy, but like understanding it certainly makes it easy because what happens with 9s is because they just sort of roll with the punches, right? So imagine just someone who just goes into work and they're cool and like they're cool, punching the clock, team player. Today was good. I went in, I got paid. Everything's cool, right? It was fun. I like that person. They're nice, right? But don't rock the boat. right? And so imagine that person in an environment where you're like, hey, we drive change. It's like, oh, that's hard, right? Because change is hard. And so the positive things about 9 is they can be a grounding force for everyone around them because they're just going to come to work and do what's in front of them, right? Keep the peace, keep the seas calm. It's nice to have a grounding force on a team like that. The negatives or the unhealthy side of it can be that they can be seen as a bit stubborn. And a lot of it is just like maybe resistance to change, right? And so but they won't outwardly say, hey, I'm not doing that, right? Because they don't like conflict. But what will happen is they might just kind of sit back, they're quiet, they seem detached, right? And they might kind of dig in a little bit. It can sometimes be seen as lazy, is a kind of a derogatory word to use for them, but in the sense that like they don't seem like they're pushing, right? And part of it is like if you push them, they can, without verbally, maybe challenging you, they can kind of dig in a little bit. And you can see it as like, oh, this person doesn't do crap. It's the same old thing. They're not looking to push. They're not looking to get better. This is somebody who might say on our team, it might frustrate us that they're not reading enough books or pushing forward, or like, what's your growth been lately? What are you doing to grow? Like, what did you do during this break? Did you learn 5 new skills and do this and that? And maybe that's the personality of our team. And this person's like, no, I just hung out with the kids and did whatever. You're kind of like, oh gosh. But that can be really good on a team. And if they understand why things are happening, they might not be the fastest one to get up to speed with your new ideas, but once they do, they're very loyal. And they are a very good grounding force for your team. You just have to be patient with them. And you have to understand that just because they're not rah-rah all the time doesn't mean that they're not on board, right? And they're not lazy, and it's just their personality type moves a bit slower,
right,
a little bit more calculated, but you need that, right? Like, again, it's almost like that 6 that's going to stand up and say, this is a terrible idea, we're all going to die, right? That 9 is going to move a little bit slower. And if that's the largest percentage of the population, then certainly you need to understand how that works, right? Because not everyone's just going to change on a dime. And again, you mentioned like, what does this look like through the lens of the customers? Well, if most people are 9s, imagine if you retool the setup of your studio, right? And there's a lot of people who they might not even say anything, but you can just tell there's like a weird energy, and they're like, you just got to give them time. They got to know why, right? And eventually they'll make their way. And then they're loyal and they come in 3 times a week for 10 years, right? As an example. That's the kind of person you like, right? Yeah. You just have to understand that the downsides can seem stubborn, lazy, unmotivated, that type of thing. And they're not. It's just, they just operate at a different pace and a different mindset.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the list. You got anything else to add?
No. Listen, guys, we love it. I think it's, again, it really helped our team understand each other. I would say start with just a simple exercise around your team themselves. And then everyone can understand maybe why that one person is, always abrasive, or this person is always want to party. And you know what I mean? And always understand there's 2 sides to every coin. So there's always a lot of positives to every 9, types. And you just have to understand that anything in life has a flip side to that coin. So appreciate the positives and then coach people on the negative side of the coin, if you will, if there is such a thing, or the other side of the coin, to just get better and to be more cognizant of how an unhealthy version of a 4 or a 6 or whatever that is can negatively affect their team if we're not careful. And that's the best way to navigate it. But if anything, it helps people understand who they are and how their lens works on the world. They'll have a couple aha moments, and so will everyone on the team, and it makes a great team exercise. So I'd highly suggest it. So yeah, that's it. We love it. We'll keep doing it every time we get somebody new on the team. Just kind of tells us who they are. So look it up. I would do the free test first, and if you're really into it, there's a lot of paid versions you could do that take a deeper dive.
Cool. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thanks.